Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am going to be sharing a card featuring a brayer background technique. It gives you this really beautiful abstract effect, and I think it might be, wait for it, my favorite card ever. I am going to be working on a tonic easy clean mat, and I'm placing it over my cutting mat here that I usually work on. Now this Heidi Swap mat is actually magnetic, so that ruler that I pulled into the shot is a magnet helping to hold this tonic easy clean mat in place on my surface. So that's kind of cool. And I'm going to be featuring once again the Concord and Ninth color collection. And I'll also be using this rubber brayer. Now the colors I chose for my background today are Ballet Slipper, Honeysuckle, Grapefruit, Sea Glass, Peacock, and I'm gonna bring in some Stardust in a little bit. Now when you're inking a brayer, you want to roll across the surface of your ink pad and roll kind of in the same place several times so that you are covering the entire surface of the brayer with ink. And then I'm going to take my brayer and just kind of run it on this tonic easy clean surface and then take it to my cardstock. Now I'm using the Concord and Ninth white cardstock today. It works beautifully for this technique. It is so super smooth, and Concord and Ninth actually picked this white cardstock to complement its ink. So you're going to get great stamp results and great inking results. Now I want to show you, I took the brayer back to the ink that was on my surface and added more ink to my cardstock, and it leaves these like lines and that sort of thing. That's going to help create the abstract effect. Now stick with me here because it kind of looks like a mess at times, but it's just like ink blending in that sometimes it looks like a mess and then all of a sudden it looks like a piece of art. Now, another way you can ink your brayer is to add the ink to a slick surface and pick it up with the brayer, which is what I'm doing here. This is going to give me a little bit more irregular inking on the brayer, but I'm okay with that because I am going for an abstract look. Now, I do want to tell you that I'm going to show you several ways to kind of ink your brayer to create different textures, different intensities of inks. But the more that you play with this, the more familiar you get with how it goes down and the looks that you get when you overlap. It's really quite fun. I have to say I had a really good time. And this first background, I hadn't done it before. I mean back in the day maybe. But I was really just experimenting, getting a feel for it, and I didn't end up using this background. Now, you don't have to ink the entire surface of the brayer. You saw me just ink the right side of it there, so I can cover a smaller area and blend into smaller areas without overlapping the colors too much. So this is the grapefruit ink, and I just ran it along that edge. And once again, you're gonna see me go back to the ink that's on this easy clean mat, pick some more up, and go back to my surface several times. Now, once again, I am just barely inking up the edge of this brayer, and depending on where I want to put this on my surface, that helps me determine which side of the brayer I'm inking. My brain just kind of was like, oh, if I want to put it into this little spot, I want to be able to see where I'm going, so I'm going to ink up the left side rather than the right. Now you're going to see me blend on this beautiful peacock color, and I got a little carried away with it here. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, but I don't really like the shape of this. So I blended more on, and I may have gotten a little carried away. Now in the end, I go back and I look at this background and I'm thinking, I could have probably used it, but I'm glad I explored more. Now in this lower corner, I am blending, or rolling on, I should say, brayering on, because I'm not really blending the colors, I'm more like layering them. I added some of that sea glass. Now this is the background that I actually end up using, and I've sped it up here because I'm doing a lot of the same things, but I want to talk to you about a couple of ways to add different kind of widths of inking. So when you're inking up the brayer, you can kind of tilt it to the side to get a narrower inking. So you're just using the edge of the ink pad, which is what I'm doing here with this grapefruit ink. And you can see I'm blending it on to a couple areas, or I keep saying blending. I'm rolling. I am not blending. But I'm adding it on to a couple of the areas, and then I'm going to pick up some of this honeysuckle. I've just inked up the center of the brayer to add smaller amounts of this. And you can see that when I pick up the ink from the surface, I'm actually getting a less intense color than when I actually take the brayer to the ink pad. So with this Peacock ink, this time I added it onto my surface first, and then I was like, well, that's not quite enough. So I added a little more to my brayer, and then I kind of rolled my brayer across my surface, and then I just stopped. I was like, okay, that's good right there. Sometimes you just got to know when to stop. Now to clean the brayer between colors, I'm just using a baby wipe, and then I'm drying the surface with a dry cloth so that I'm not watering down my ink. And then I am adding some Stardust here, which I think really makes this background come to life. Then I'm going to go over a lot of these areas again with this Ballet slipper. This is going to kind of mix and meld the inks a little bit more, add a little more color to the pink areas, and I can go right over the top of the grapefruit. And since this is such a light ink, it doesn't really obliterate the grapefruit. It kind of blends with it. And then if I need to add more back in, I can roll that back on. Now, if you take your brayer to the corner of your ink pad, like I'm doing here, I got this really cool kind of triangle shape on my brayer, and I was able to add that onto the card because I inked up my brayer in a different way. And here is the finished result. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to make a card out of it because that's what we do here. So I am taking a piece of Essentials by Ellen Vellum. I'm prepping the surface with a powder tool, and I am going to use this Ever So Grateful stamp. This is from the Concord and 9th Hey Bestie stamp set. I absolutely love this sentiment and so many of the sentiments in the stamp set, and it's got a really cool hexagon, couple of hexagon shapes. Very cool stamp set. You should check it out. So I've inked that in Versamark ink, stamped it onto my vellum. Then I added some gold embossing powder and I heat set that. Now I'm going to lay it over, and I thought I would use it in its entirety, this big piece of vellum kind of overlaying this abstract background. But I really decided that I did not want to take away from the intensity of the background. So I'm going to tear, yes, tear my sentiment. I thought this added to kind of that really abstract effect, and I was really happy with the results. Now I have to say the one thing this was missing for me was some gold, and so I grabbed this painted stripe background from Concord and 9th, and I inked up one of the stripes. I prepped the surface of my card front here with some powder tool, and I am just going to stamp this single stripe onto this card front, and I didn't even ink up the entire stripe because I want it to be just like a paint stroke of gold. And in order to achieve that effect, I'm actually going to use the Ranger Sticky Embossing Powder. Now this embossing powder can be a little bit tricky. You want to heat set it just until it melts, and I may have overheated it here. Overheated it? Is that right? Because when I went to add my deco foil and I pressed it on with my bone folder, I noticed that as I went to remove the foil backer, that I was kind of pulling up some of the embossing powder. It wasn't really sticking well. So I just brought in my heat tool again and left the foil in place, kind of heated up the embossing powder once again to bring back a little bit of the stick. I let it cool, rubbed it in with my finger, and then I was able to pull that off and have this really, really beautiful gold stripe down the side of my card. Now I also added some splatters with that gold foil as well, and some of them did not transfer well, and I thought rather than fuss with this, I'm just going to take my two-way glue pen. This is a ballpoint glue pen. I'm going to add some little dots of adhesive onto my card front where I missed maybe the embossing powder in some of those areas. I'm going to allow that to dry because this glue does dry tacky. And then I'm going to take the foil back to the surface of the card and transfer the foil onto that adhesive, and that works perfectly too. Now I added that sentiment piece on with a little bit of foam adhesive that is hidden behind that stamped and die cut heart. Now that heart is also from the Hey Bestie stamp set, which is a part of the new release from Concord and Ninth. I absolutely love that heart. And here is the finished project. I absolutely love this card. It so much reminds me of a painting that I recently purchased for my home. It has all of these beautiful colors. It's very abstract, and the painting itself has those gold accents as well. And this card just hits the mark for me. I had a great time making this background as well. I did want to mention this brayer background technique was inspired by my friend Carly T. I'm going to link her in the description below so that you can check out her video where she created brayered backgrounds and kind of get some more inspiration using this technique. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure to check there. But you can also head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I've inspired you to get your brayer out and get your roll on. If you liked this video and this project, make sure you hit that thumbs up like button below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. As always, I appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with me today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.